I'm in a debunking fake quotes mood again. This time I'm going to show you the process of how I verify these sorts of citations of primary sources, where the actual source isn't cited so that you can do it yourself. Today the subject is Karl Marx's supposed racism against Mexicans, as claimed in this article by the Daily Signal, called The Ugly Racism of Karl Marx. Marx and Engels are quoted. Apparently, Marx said, "Is it a misfortune that magnificent California was seized from the lazy Mexicans who did not know what to do with it?" The first thing I do pretty much always is take a snippet of the quote and put it into Google Scholar, with quotes around it to ensure precision. This searches an absolute ton of academic journal articles, books, and college papers, far more than any other method I know of. As you can see, there's zero results. If Karl Marx said something like that, it should definitely have been cited at least once in an academic work, so my bullshit senses are tingling. Now let's go to Google and do the same search. Most of these are just regurgitated quotes with no citations, but there is a book there which might have citations. So let's click it. Well, this chapter is apparently from 2006, so we're getting further back in time, which is good for trying to find the original source. But still, no actual citation. It does mention a book, but unfortunately I couldn't find an online copy of it. And regardless, we're talking about Karl Marx here. His work has been scrutinized down to the letter for like more than a century. It's also in the public domain, so if he wrote anything like that, the work that it was in would be showing up in search results. So that quote is pretty much certain to be fake. Maybe the other quote in the article from Engels could help us in figuring out just how it came to be. Engels added, "In America, we have witnessed the conquest of Mexico and have rejoiced at it. It is to the interest of its own development that Mexico will be placed under the tutelage of the United States." Okay, so let's toss that one into Google Scholar. Now there's some results, we're finally getting somewhere. Only 2 of these articles are freely available and one doesn't cite a source, but the other one luckily does. Click them and well, we just want to find the source for the quote, so we're not going to read the whole thing. So I hit Ctrl F in my browser once the page is fully loaded, and I search for a part of the phrase. If it doesn't show up, try searching for a different part of the phrase. For me, I searched have re, just in case something is misspelled, formatted differently, or they're using a different translation. And there it is, with a citation, thank God. You can see that since the author misspelled rejoiced, if I'd searched for the full quote, it wouldn't have worked. That's why it's better to try smaller parts of the quote sometimes. Let's find the work that it cites, the Movement of 1847. Since this work is in the public domain, it's pretty much guaranteed to be freely available online. Seems like the essay we just came from misattributed to Marx because the source says it's by Engels. In this work, we can hit Ctrl F again and find the quote. Here it is in its full context. "In America, we have witnessed the conquest of Mexico and have rejoiced at it. It is also an advance when a country which has hitherto been exclusively wrapped up in its own affairs, perpetually rent with civil wars, and completely hindered in its development, a country whose best prospect had been to become industrially subject to Britain, when such a country is forcibly drawn into the historical process. It is to the interest of its own development that Mexico will in future be placed under the tutelage of the United States. The evolution of the whole of America will profit by the fact that the United States, by the possession of California, obtains command of the Pacific." But again we ask, who is going to profit immediately by the war? The bourgeoisie alone. The North Americans acquire new regions in California and New Mexico for the creation of fresh capital, that is, for calling new bourgeois into being, and enriching those already in existence. For all capital created today flows into the hands of the bourgeoisie. The reason that he justifies the US's annexation of Mexican territory is because Mexico was unstable due to civil wars and its internal affairs, and so if it was stable and under American tutelage, it would apparently be able to industrialize faster. He's clearly torn on this though, because he notes that it would be the bourgeoisie who would be the immediate beneficiaries. But overall, it seems like he thinks this would be the best option for the Americas, and if you know anything about Marxism, it's clear why. Historical materialism. This way they could industrialize faster, and thus have the revolution that would overthrow the US dominance faster. Is it kind of dumb? Yeah, I think so. It's very Eurocentric, and you know, it's understandable that it was because it was written by a 25-year-old guy in 1848 who'd never left Europe and whose knowledge of the Americas came from whatever little information about them was translated into the languages that he spoke. It was also written very early as Engels and Marx hadn't developed their thought at the time. This was only 1848. They wrote a whole lot more in the decades after that. It's not really racist at all though. He's not saying it because he thinks Mexicans are inferior, he's saying it because Mexico was unstable and thus unable to industrialize according to him. It's definitely a sort of dogmatic historical materialism, and it even comes off as kind of accelerationist, but it's not racist. I'd also take a guess that the purported Marx quote is based on this passage by Engels. Someone probably read it and then decided to make up a quote and attribute it to Marx. Anyway, hope you learned something about Googling and the Beard Boys, of which I am one. See ya!